It's nice to be around other Catholics.
Ja, mein Freund.
What's up, boys? What are we doing?
Mark, this is Bible study.
Oh my god, I forgot you guys pray to that guy.
Do you mean Jesus Christ?
Yeah, the crying wussy god.
My God.
Oh my god. How do you guys handle the sound of constant crying?
Mark, what are you talking about?
I mean, I'm always getting nagged at, yelled at, chewed out. You know how it is.
Huh?
I mean, what does he even say to you guys?
Oh, wait a second. Does your God actually speak to you?
Mark, don't say shit.
Now, I am not a religious man, but I do love religious characters. They can be principled in a way that speaks more to one's spirituality and less about their ego, thinking outside of your own feelings and human perspective, and trying to imagine what an all-powerful deity would want you to do, being critical of yourself and your choices, trying to do better for a creator you will never meet in this lifetime. Now, I know in our modern world, a lot of people you encounter simply use religion as a shield, as a limitless get-out-of-jail-free card, because if they keep repenting, they can sin as much as they want, which is not how it works, I think. What truly makes religious characters like Daredevil, Nightcrawler, and even Moon Knight interesting is that they take this incredibly seriously. They ask large philosophical questions and use the framework of their respective religions to analyze the superhero world. Now, personally, I read comics with the usual sci-fi plots that ask questions about utilitarianism and time travel and multiverse shenanigans. Religious characters can sometimes get us to slow down a bit and focus on our innate humanity, however ugly it might be, and still choosing to love that ugly part. I recently watched the new Knives Out movie, and it really spoke to me in a number of ways. I love the line from Father Judd asking Benoit Blanc if the stories the Bible tells us are meant to trick us, to deceive us with a lie, or do these stories tell something about ourselves, a profound truth? In this video, I want to figure out what that truth is for each of our guys here. So, I'll go over some comics from Daredevil and talk about how a violent man can still be a godly one. I'll talk about Nightcrawler and how evil begets evil, and lastly, I'll talk about Moon Knight and the struggle of faith. Without a doubt, Matt Murdock is the reason I wanted to make this video. Just with the imagery of the devil repenting in front of God is already so moving, but it represents Matt so well. If you've seen the Netflix show, you've definitely gotten a good read on how someone like Daredevil approaches the world with his religion. Of course, you have the easy to understand no kill rule. That iconic argument in season 2 has made it so I always read Daredevil and Punisher interactions with their voices. However, I want to go over a run I skipped in my previous Daredevil video and talk about Zdarsky's first arc in his Daredevil 2019 comic. When we first see Matt in the church, it's a nice interaction that sets the foundation for his reasoning to become a vigilante. We hear the story of how he got these baseball cards back for his dim-witted friend who was scammed out of them. The priest surprisingly seems to support this behavior, saying the only thing he did wrong was getting caught. This obviously empowers Matt to do what he feels is right in this world. I wonder if this moment gave him the courage and righteousness to save that man from that truck that's unfortunately blinded him. We don't get to see that, as the next time we see Matt in the church, he is already blinded. Clearly depressed and lost, he is sitting in the house of God full of hate. And when Matt makes a comment on how he doesn't need confession because he's blind now, so he can't do anything, he can't even sin, the priest calls him out on his bullshit, saying that's not true. Your sin is hating God. Matt saved a man's life, and what does he get in return but blinded? How is that fair? The priest tells him this is God revealing your path to you in ways they don't understand, but we as the readers know exactly what he means, what God had planned for Daredevil. So when the priest says that God loves you, it doesn't feel empty, it feels true. We keep getting snapshots of Daredevil's journey to becoming a hero, and at this stage, he feels conflicted as he has used great violence, indulged in the sin of wrath. Daredevil is a lot of things, but he is his daddy's son. He loves to scrap. The priest knows this too. Matt tries to justify his actions by talking about how Jesus whipped the money changers, but we all know that was an action of God. Matt's violence derives from the sin of man. The priest knows his voice and tells Matthew that people who succumb to violence grow to crave it, like an addict. And while Daredevil tries to rationalize what he does, he is addicted to violence. So the plot I skipped over in the first issue has to do with Matt busting these robbers, and one of them dies from head trauma, so Matt is racked with guilt and goes to question the doctor who operated on him, assuming there was some foul play involved, that someone is out there to frame Daredevil for murder. Matt does his classic interrogation, listening to his heartbeat to detect lies, but the doctor is not lying. The man was bound to die before he hit the operating table. He recognizes why Matt is doing this. He wants to assign blame to anyone but himself. His next bit of dialogue here is really interesting. He talks about how every time he handles these criminals that get beat up by Daredevil, that their injuries are always so precise, surgical, always avoiding anything fatal or chronic, how these guys always get better. He then says that Matt needs to stop the violence, and this part really got me here. There are other ways to help. I mean, with your abilities, you should have been a doctor. Man, oh man, what a line. I mean, truly this arc is magnificent. We see how Matt is trying his hardest to justify this violent nature of his, but anyone else with his abilities could be doing so much more. Imagine Daredevil's radar sense being used to detect tumors, locate foreign objects in someone's body, putting back dislocated shoulders. Instead, Daredevil uses this power to hurt people. Is this what the priest envisioned for him all those years ago? After some shenanigans with the new cop in town, Matt is captured by this channel's #1 enemy, the Punisher. Usually, I jump into straight slander here, you know how much I hate Frank, but what he says here to Matt is honestly pretty damning. He talks about how Daredevil is a fraud. He pretends like he just wants to help people, but he's more like Frank than he'd care to admit. He just wants to punish people. They both like to hurt. Daredevil has the comfort of a line he can't cross, a moral code that keeps the guilt from becoming too strong. However, at their core, these are violent men who crave violence. To prove this, right after Daredevil gets free from Frank's little torture chamber, the first thing he does is put on Punisher's shirt unknowingly and channels all this anger, guilt, and shame into beating the fuck out of the Owl's crew. He's enacting the same sinful wrath that he hates in Frank, trying to find atonement in punishing others. As he's in the thick of it, stabbing, bashing, and punching these men, he thinks to himself about how he's doing this to help, trying to convince himself that this isn't all an addiction, a craving for violence. Thankfully, he gets saved by the Defender's crew, and Matt is tired, lost, and exhausted, but he has accepted that they will turn him into jail now. This is the solution to his pain, but just when he thinks he has found the answer, they drop a bomb on him. Not only are they not here to send him to jail, but they admit that criminals have died in their encounters too. Accidents happen. You'd think this would ease Matt's suffering, but someone as principled as he is just says, "You're all murderers. We're all murderers." Right as he was about to accept the end, he gets even more confused with no real answer to his dilemma. He pretends to use the bathroom and escapes. We get another flashback to Daredevil's early days, trying to explain to his priest on why he does what he does, but the priest knows Matt better than he does and calls him out on his bullshit. How his father fought so he didn't have to. And he dresses like a devil to make it seem like it's not him doing this. This next line I liked quite a bit. Not Jack Murdoch's boy, beating up the disenfranchised, the ones who haven't found God yet. The Lord examines both the righteous and the wicked. He hates those who love violence. God hates violent men because they exhibit everything he warns us about. It reminds me a lot of the climax in Wake Up Dead Man, where Father Judd is lost and confused, but realizes that this whodunit mystery game is not what a priest does. He doesn't seek out the wicked and bring them to justice, he brings them to Christ with love. Daredevil is bringing violence to people with hate. The priest tells him again, God loves you, renounce the violence, and cast out this devil. Then we get this baller moment where Spider-Man has to G-check Matt and tell him it's over. Peter comes here as a friend, stern but still full of love, trying to prevent Matt from continuing with his suicidal tendencies. For a man as relentless as Matt, he still sees this moment for what it is, and that the answer he's been searching for is the most simple one: just stop. We end on the words of the priest overlaid with Matt sitting in his apartment crying to himself. Man, dude, that hurts. This arc is so good. There was a lot I skipped over, so you should read it, but I really love how Zdarsky is challenging Matt on his level of violence and what that means as a godly man. I mean, in superhero comics, usually street tears, they absolutely love fighting. Batman, Moon Knight, and yes, Daredevil. However, when you pray to a very famously all-loving God who seeks to bring in those who are lost rather than hurt them and cast them out, you ask yourself, how do I honor my God? More importantly, when I shame my God, how do I ask for forgiveness? Well, a certain blue elf might have the answers there. Nightcrawler was born looking like a demon, but he has the kind spirit of a priest. And while Daredevil puts on the costume of a red demon, Nightcrawler was born like this. He has to fight against people's assumptions of his wickedness, and because he's one of the kindly ones, he's the person the X-Men go to when they are lost. So, we're going to be covering Wolverine 2003, issue 6. This infamous cover, which does nothing at all to explain what the issue is actually about. You come into this comic thinking it's going to be something hot and steamy, but man oh man, would you be wrong. So Wolverine is in this bar, drinking away his guilt like he normally does, and a priest walks in. He orders a beer and Logan says make it a pitcher and 3 glasses, and put it on my tab. The priest says, thank you my son, but Wolverine is not having it, saying, don't think about touching me unless you're gonna look like you when you do it, elf. This is obviously Nightcrawler, but he, like most mutants with a physical mutation, hides himself. Wolverine hates that shit though, and shows Kurt that the people in this bar are mutants, and that he's safe. So they share a drink, and Nightcrawler tries making small talk with Logan. but he's drunk, sad, and clearly distraught. So Kurt just says what happened. He of course says nothing happened, but Nightcrawler refutes that, saying you're even more unpleasant than usual and you smell like shit. Logan is like, you think I don't know I smell? I have smelling powers, which is true. Nightcrawler says, self-loathing does not become you, Logan. This from a guy who hides his face, he replies. Damn. Touché. They finally get to the reason why they're both here. Nightcrawler says, the girl who died, the one you couldn't save, what was her name? Wolverine tells him about the 17-year-old named Lucy Braddock, who was gunned down by this cult. Nightcrawler tells him it must be hard trying to punish yourself by getting drunk with a healing factor. It's here you are drinking away. Kurt tries to contextualize this death for Logan. How yes, 17 is too young, but one might say 70 is also too young. But death is a part of life, even unnatural death. Perhaps even murder. Wolverine disagrees. Nightcrawler talks about how even the most ancient versions of the Old Testament contain stories of murder, how Cain slew Abel, and thus the world knew of it. One could argue that murder is as natural as dying of old age. Logan says you don't really believe that. Nightcrawler says he's unsure of what he believes now. He has to rely on objective facts instead of theory. And the fact is that Logan is an honorable man. His actions say so. There's a pause, then Logan says that 3 days ago he killed 27 men. Does this action speak of honor? Nightcrawler first questions if he was enraged, and of course he was, but did they earn this rage? Logan says you're looking for an excuse, but no, Nightcrawler is making sure that Wolverine didn't just kill 27 innocent men, because then he would have to stop him, and while he wouldn't get far, he would die trying. Logan tells him about the cult and what they did. Nightcrawler has a line here of evil begets evil, which is such an interesting concept in the X-Men comics. I mean, you see this with Magneto most obviously, a man who suffered one of the worst events in recorded history, and the evil that was done unto him, he has done unto others. Wolverine correctly identifies himself as the evil that was begotten and asks for absolution. Nightcrawler smiles and says, how wonderful would it be if it worked like that? People just sinning like crazy, knowing they can always repent and get absolved for their crimes. He talks about how they tried that back in the day, but does Logan want that? A hollow forgiveness? With no real catharsis or anything to ease the discord that he feels inside? Wolverine says, does he need forgiveness? And Kurt says, isn't that what you're after? Those men were evil, that's certain, but a rageful man slaughtering evil men. Nightcrawler then says that Wolverine is unique, and just like Magneto is the begotten evil from his tragic backstory, Wolverine has his own origin. Finally, Nightcrawler says this one line that really defines Wolverine in a way he might not like. Is the wolf evil when it calls a sickness from the herd? On its face, you simply think everyone has their duty, their natural instinct. You don't blame creatures for doing what they're designed to do. But is that what Wolverine's whole purpose is? To kill? Is he just what his makers of Weapon X designed him to be? Outside, he sums all of that up by saying, that thing about the wolves. I'm not an animal. I'm not. Nightcrawler just replies, I know my friend. I know you aren't. Wolverine looks down, saying it one last time, hoping he can believe it himself. I'm not. This one was a doozy. I had a bit of trouble finding a single comic that focused on Nightcrawler's faith, but I think this one ties in nicely to the previous one with Matt. Nightcrawler is more of a shepherd here, trying to guide Logan back to the righteous path, fully knowing the animal that lies inside of him. Unlike Daredevil, I don't think Wolverine could handle the judgment we saw in the Daredevil comics. Matt caused the death of a man by accident. Logan intentionally slaughtered 27 men. Even though they were evil, that's a tough pill to swallow. In this issue, I don't see Nightcrawler trying to change Logan, but hoping to rescue him from a pit of despair, so that he can hope to change another day. The only thing I'd say that is stronger than hope is the cornerstone of all religion, that is, faith. How does a man who can see and speak to his God use faith? Why does he even need it? Let's talk about my boy Moon Knight. For most religious characters, they believe in an unknowable God, but when you intimately know your God, his passion and anger, pettiness and kindness, his flaws and strengths, when you know him like a son knows his father, what do you need faith for? While Mark has always struggled with his devotion to Khonshu, he does come through from time to time. I mean, this page was super cool. I wish we could see more of Moon Knight stepping into that priest role. However, let's go over a comic I touched on in my last Moon Knight video because it represents something about faith and believing in a higher power that many people can't grapple with. This is Moon Knight 2014, issue 15. We see the aftermath of an encounter that Mark had with a boogeyman. Then on the next page, we see our Moon Knight, bloodied and limping, muttering the words, "Why, Khonshu? Why have you forsaken me?" If you are a religious person, I'm sure you can understand the feeling, believing in a way of living to serve this higher power, and you expect in return for them to guide you, care for you, provide for you. However, when you do everything right and still end up bleeding out in an alley like some stray dog, do you keep on believing? We see Moon Knight recount the battle, getting tossed around by this creature, then he collapses. A crowd forms around him and carries him to safety. These are people, ghosts, or some other kind of trick Khonshu has pulled to heal his broken boy. However, this is not enough for Mark. He presses Khonshu on this, and Khonshu tells him that he stepped out of line. The boogeyman is not for him to handle, but that boogeyman is terrorizing children. Mark has to do something. Khonshu says, "If you defy me again, I cannot help you, Mark." Mark gets petty and says, "Can't or won't." This enrages Khonshu, who shouts,
"You doubt me?"
This is why I love Khonshu. He represents the old world gods that are full of wrath and pride, but still full of wisdom and strength. Mark is unfazed and says, "Fuck you, man, I'll do it alone." He gets to his armory and we cut to this little girl clutching her blanket as something talks to her about fear. How every time the children he eats fear him, it makes them taste so much better. He says how after you, I'll move to a new place with more children. He finally says, "Sorry, I can't help myself. Now when the hunger is so," and he just gets lit up. I mean, Mark comes in like he's the Punisher. Sheesh. However, when the kid sees Mark, she thinks he is another boogeyman, which he uses to get her to run to her parents to run to safety. Mark and the creature battle it out, and after Moon Knight wins, he says that he hopes that Khonshu is watching to see how he gets along just fine without him. But as he motions to leave, he hears the creature mutter something. Mark kneels down to him, telling him to speak, but the words that come out of his mouth will shake him more than anything. "Why, Khonshu? Why have you forsaken me?" What could that possibly mean? Why did Khonshu want Mark to stay away from a creature who's eating children? Why did that creature call out to his god? These are the kinds of questions that destroy a man's faith, more than any battle that leaves you bleeding out in an alley. Why would a good god let bad things like that happen? Moreover, why would a good god create a horrible creature like that, if we are to assume that Khonshu is his creator? All we know is that eventually Mark rekindles his faith at the end of this run after running into another evildoer who claims to worship Khonshu. Man, this video is only the tip of the iceberg, but it was getting kind of long. However, I want to cover more religious characters in the future, so comment below other comics or characters I should cover instead. All in all, I think these stories ask us questions that we can't answer immediately. We need to search our souls and our minds to find what resonates with us. For me, I would have never worshipped Khonshu again. Why do you got a man eating children out here and I can't stop him? Maybe Khonshu knew Mark would have his faith broken if he figured out what horrible creature he made. Nonetheless, that story is insane. Daredevil and Wolverine are both interesting because they are both these men who crave violence but know that it's a horrible thing. However, these are superhero comics, so how do you save the day without beating up the bad guy? For someone like Matt, he really could have been a doctor. For Weapon X, Logan Howlett, he might have been born a wolf. Let me know what you guys think about these characters and the questions they tackle. I just hit 20k, so thank you guys so much for all the love you've been giving me. Shout out to the Watchtower employees, and of course my OG7s, my Day 1 Cable. Then we got my boy Joey, Shane Stapler, who upgraded. Thank you so much, man. We got Zuzu Pazuzu and Aquamarine Adenine. Very fun names to say. Our newest OG7 member is now Dennis. I love the picture, man. I got a cat just like that. But let me know which of these stories was your favorite and what I should cover next. That's it for today, boys. Peace.